I knew I should have stayed away from Alexander Whitmore the moment my son looked at his picture in the newspaper and whispered, "Mom, why does he have my eyes?" The rain had followed us all the way from Queens to the iron gates of the Whitmore estate, beating against the windshield of my old Toyota like a warning I was too desperate to obey. Noah slept in the back seat with his cheek pressed against his booster seat, one small hand curled around his sister's sleeve. Lily was awake. She always was when she sensed fear in me. 5 years old and already too quiet, too watchful, too good at reading the spaces between my breaths. "Are we safe here?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the wipers scraping across the glass. I looked past the gates at the mansion rising beyond the long driveway, all white stone, black windows, and cold light. Safe was not the word I would have chosen. Powerful, maybe. Untouchable. Dangerous in the way winter looks beautiful until it kills everything soft. "I hope so," I whispered, and hated myself for giving her only half a truth. The guard at the gate didn't smile when I gave him my name. His eyes moved from my face to the twins, then back again, and something changed in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. He spoke into a radio, too low for me to hear over the storm, and 30 seconds later the gates opened without a sound. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I had spent 5 years running from this name. Whitmore. I had crossed state lines, changed apartments, worked cash jobs, slept with a chair beneath the doorknob, and taught my children never to answer questions about their father. Then life did what life always does when it wants to break you. It took away every other choice. The driveway curved for what felt like half a mile before the house swallowed us in its shadow. Men in black suits stood beneath the front portico, not moving, not speaking, just watching as I parked beside a line of cars worth more than every home I had ever rented. Through the tall windows, I saw chandeliers, dark suits, a long table, a room full of men waiting for a signature. I didn't know then that Alexander was about to sign away his life to a woman he didn't love just to keep control of an empire I had never wanted my children near. I only knew that if I turned around, the people searching for us would eventually find our motel, and this time I might not be fast enough. I opened the back door and unbuckled Lily first. Her tiny fingers gripped my coat. Noah woke as I lifted him down, blinking at the mansion through rain-dark lashes. "Is this a castle?" he murmured. "No," I said, pulling them close. "It's just a house." But even I didn't believe that. The front doors opened before we reached them. Warm light spilled across the wet stone steps, and every conversation inside died at once. I stepped into Alexander Whitmore's world with rain in my hair, fear in my lungs, and his children holding both my hands. At the end of the room, he stood with a silver pen in his fingers, tall and still in a black suit, his face sharper than memory, his eyes colder than the last night I saw him. The woman beside him wore diamonds and a white dress that looked too much like a promise. Someone whispered my name. Alexander did not move. He looked at me first, and I watched 6 years of anger pass across his face like a storm behind glass. Then his gaze dropped to Noah, to Lily, to their gray eyes, to the shape of Noah's mouth, to the way Lily tilted her chin when she was trying not to cry. The pen slipped from his fingers and struck the table with a sound that seemed to crack the whole room open. I wanted to say I was sorry. I wanted to say I had no choice. I wanted to say I had kept them alive the only way I knew how. But Noah stepped forward before I could speak, still holding my hand, and looked up at the most dangerous man in New York like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Mom," he whispered, "is that him?" Alexander's eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time in all the years I had known him, he looked less like a king and more like a man who had just found the one wound he could not command to stop bleeding. The silence after Noah's question felt heavier than the rain on my coat. No one moved. Not the men around the long mahogany table. Not the woman in white standing beside Alexander. Not even the guards near the doors, who suddenly looked as if they had been taught how to breathe only when he allowed it. Alexander stared at my son like the world had narrowed to 5 feet of polished floor between them. I felt Noah's hand tighten inside mine. Lily pressed closer to my leg, her small body trembling so lightly that only a mother would notice. I wanted to pick them both up and run. Every instinct I had sharpened over 5 years told me to turn around before this house remembered how to close its doors. But Alexander finally moved, and the room seemed to move with him. One step, then another. Slow, controlled. His shoes made almost no sound against the marble, but I felt each step in my chest. He stopped in front of us, close enough for me to see the faint line near his left eyebrow, the one I remembered from a night I had spent trying to keep him awake while sirens screamed somewhere far away. 6 years had changed him. Not softened him. Never that. It had carved him into something colder, quieter, more exact. But his eyes were the same storm gray that looked back at me every morning from my children's faces. "Claire," he said. "Just my name. Nothing else." But it carried every unanswered call, every empty morning, every year he thought I had left because loving him had become inconvenient. My throat closed. "Alexander." The woman in white stepped forward, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. "What is this?" she asked, her voice sharp but polished, like broken glass wrapped in silk. Alexander did not look at her. "Not now, Madison." Madison. So she had a name. A beautiful one. A suitable one. The kind of woman families like his chose before feelings could become a liability. Her face tightened, but she stepped back because everyone in that room understood something I had tried to forget. When Alexander Whitmore spoke quietly, people listened faster. His gaze lowered to Lily. She hid behind me, leaving only one gray eye visible above my sleeve. Something shifted in his expression then. Not warmth exactly. He had forgotten how to wear warmth openly. But restraint. Recognition. A kind of careful fear, as if he knew one wrong movement could make her disappear. "What is your name?" he asked her. Lily did not answer. Noah did. "Her name is Lily. I am Noah. We are twins." A few men exchanged glances. Someone at the table whispered a word I could not catch, but Alexander heard it. His eyes cut toward the sound, and the whisper died. Then he looked back at me. "How old are they?" My mouth felt dry. 5. His jaw tightened. Not much. Just enough. Enough to tell me he had already done the math. He looked at Noah again, at the shape of his face, at the silver gray eyes, at the stubborn lift of his chin. My son had never met his father, but blood had written itself into him with cruel honesty. "They are not yours," I said, because panic has a way of making liars out of desperate women. Alexander's gaze returned to me, and the room disappeared. Then why did he ask if I was him? I had no answer. The truth stood between us with 2 small heartbeats and wet shoes on his marble floor. Noah looked up at him, curious in that brave, foolish way children can be before the world teaches them caution. "Mom said our dad was far away." Alexander swallowed, and for one impossible second, the King of New York looked wounded by a child's sentence. "Did she?" he asked softly. I bent down, pulling Noah back to me. "That is enough." "No," Alexander said. Not loud. Not cruel. Just final. His eyes lifted over my shoulder. "Clear the room." The council erupted at once, voices rising, chairs scraping, Madison saying his name like she still believed she had the right to stop him. Alexander did not raise his hand. He did not need to. The doors opened. Men began leaving because power, real power, does not beg to be obeyed. It changes the air until disobedience feels impossible. Madison paused beside me, her perfume expensive and cold. "You have no idea what you walked into," she whispered. I looked down at my children, then at Alexander. I know exactly what I walked back into. When the last door closed, only the 4 of us remained beneath the chandelier light. Rain tapped against the tall windows like fingers asking to be let in. Alexander stood very still. "Claire," he said, and this time my name sounded less like anger and more like a wound being reopened. "Tell me why 2 children with my eyes just walked into my house." I held Lily with one hand and Noah with the other, because they were the only truth I had left. "Because someone found us," I whispered. "And if I had anywhere else to go, I would never have come back." Alexander did not ask another question in that room. He looked at the twins, then at my hands wrapped around theirs, and something in his face closed like a vault. "You're wet," he said quietly. "The children are cold." It was such a simple sentence that it almost broke me. Not because it was kind. Alexander Whitmore had never been kind in a way the world would recognize. He was practical, controlled. A man who noticed weakness because weakness could become danger. But he saw Lily shivering. He saw Noah trying to stand brave with rain dripping from his hair. And for 1 second, the years between us did not matter. He turned toward the hallway. Mrs. Hale. An older woman appeared so quickly I wondered if she had been waiting outside the door. Silver hair. Navy dress. Calm eyes that flickered over the children with careful concern. Warm towels. Dry clothes. Food that is not too rich. A room near mine. My pulse jumped. No, Alexander looked back at me. No, we are not sleeping near your room. Someone found you. His voice stayed low, but the air around him sharpened. You came here because you were afraid. Do not insult both of us by pretending you are still in control. My cheeks burned. Noah looked up at me. Lily hid her face against my coat. I hated him for being right. I hated myself more for needing him to be. Mrs. Hale knelt slightly, lowering her voice to the children. I have hot chocolate in the kitchen. With marshmallows, if your mother says it is all right. Noah's eyes widened. Lily did not move until I squeezed her hand. Stay where I can see you, I whispered. Alexander's gaze shifted to the tall glass doors leading toward the private sitting room. We need to talk. Not in front of them. That is why I am moving them out of the room. His words were calm, but my heart was not. I watched Mrs. Hale lead the twins toward the warm glow of the hallway, Noah glancing back once, Lily twice. When they disappeared, the room felt too large. Too quiet. Too full of everything we had buried without a grave. Alexander stood near the windows, rain silvering the glass behind him. Start with who found you. I wrapped my arms around myself. My coat was still soaked, but the chill inside me had nothing to do with weather. A man came to the diner yesterday. Which diner? Rosemary's. Off Queens Boulevard. His eyes narrowed. He knew exactly where it was. Of course he did. Men like Alexander did not need maps. They owned the kind of people who made them. He asked about me. Not by my married name, because I never had one. Not by Bennett either. He asked for the girl who used to work at the flower shop on West 38th. The change in Alexander was almost invisible. A stillness inside the stillness. No one knows about that. Someone does. The flower shop had been mine before it became a memory I could not touch. 6 years ago, it smelled like roses, wet pavement, and cheap coffee. I was 23, working 12-hour days, trying to pay rent on a studio apartment with a radiator that screamed every morning at 5. Alexander used to come in after closing, always through the back door, always with one of his perfect suits ruined by the city. Back then, he was not yet the head of anything. He was the heir everyone feared and the man I was foolish enough to believe I could understand. The first night I found him behind the shop, he was sitting against the brick wall, one hand pressed to his side, his face pale beneath the alley light. He told me not to call anyone. I told him not to die on my trash bags. He laughed then. A real laugh. Low. Surprised. Human. That was the first sound of Alexander Whitmore I ever kept for myself. For 3 months, he came back. Sometimes with flowers he had no reason to buy. Sometimes with silence. Sometimes with eyes so tired they made him look less dangerous than lonely. He never touched what I did not offer. Never pushed where I drew a line. He just stood in my little shop among carnations and lilies, looking like a storm that had wandered into the wrong season. And I loved him before I understood what loving him would cost. Claire. His voice pulled me back to the mansion, to the rain, to the man who believed I had vanished because I chose to. I looked at him and felt the old wound open cleanly. The man at the diner knew about the shop, I said. He knew about the night you were supposed to take me out of New York. And Alexander, he knew about the twins. Alexander's face did not change when I said the word twins, and that frightened me more than anger would have. Anger was human. Anger had edges I could understand. This stillness was something else. It was the kind of quiet that made the room feel smaller, as if the walls themselves knew better than to listen too loudly. Describe him, he said. I rubbed my palms against my sleeves, trying to stop the shaking. White male. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Gray coat. Clean shoes. Too clean for the rain. He ordered black coffee and never drank it. He knew my name before I gave it to the waitress. Alexander turned slightly toward the window, and I saw his reflection in the glass, pale and sharp under the chandelier light. Did he touch you? No. Did he speak to the children? My throat tightened. He watched them through the window when I picked them up from school. That was when Alexander turned back. Not fast. Not dramatic. But the air shifted so hard I almost stepped away. What school? St. Agnes on 47th Avenue. His eyes closed for half a second, and when they opened, something colder had settled inside them. They will not go back there. You do not get to decide that. Someone used their school to reach you. And you think moving them into your world makes them safer? My voice cracked on the last word. I hated that. I hated how easily this house made me feel 23 again, standing outside a locked door with a suitcase in one hand and my whole life breaking inside me. Alexander walked to the table and picked up the silver pen he had dropped earlier. He held it for a moment, as if remembering what it had almost cost him. Do you know why you walked in tonight? He asked. Because I had no choice. No. You walked in during a council signing. I stared at him. What signing? His mouth tightened. A marriage contract. The room tilted slightly. I looked toward the door where Madison had disappeared, toward the empty chair beside his, toward the white dress I had tried not to understand. You were getting married tonight. I was securing my position. That is a beautiful way to say it. It was not meant to be beautiful. He set the pen down with careful precision. It was meant to keep my family from tearing itself apart. The word family hit wrong. I thought of Noah asking if the mansion was a castle. I thought of Lily hiding behind my coat. I thought of 5 birthdays with grocery store cupcakes and candles I bought from the dollar aisle because I was too afraid to stay anywhere long enough to build traditions. Your family had 5 years, I whispered. They did not come looking. His eyes flashed. I looked for you. The words landed between us like a door blown open. For a second, neither of us breathed. No, I said, but my voice had lost its strength. You did not. Every hospital, every bus station, every landlord within 200 miles who had ever taken cash from a woman matching your description. He stepped closer, and I felt the old gravity of him, the terrible pull I had spent years teaching myself to resist. You think I accepted that you left? My eyes burned. You stopped. Because someone made sure every trail ended in a graveyard of false names and closed accounts. I looked away first. Not because I believed him. Because part of me wanted to. That was more dangerous than fear. Before I could answer, the doors opened and an older man in a charcoal suit stepped inside. His hair was white, his posture perfect, his expression trained into respect that never reached his eyes. Alexander, the council is waiting. Madison's father is requesting an explanation. Alexander did not look away from me. He can keep requesting. This cannot wait. You have 48 hours before the vote. Without a bride, approved by the council, your claim becomes vulnerable. My stomach dropped. 48 hours. A bride. A vote. Words from a world where women were signatures and children were bloodlines before they were children. The older man's gaze moved to me with quiet calculation, then to the hallway where the twins had gone. Unless, he said carefully, the situation has changed. Alexander's eyes darkened. Leave us. You know what they will say. I said leave us. The man bowed his head and disappeared. The door clicked shut. I could hear my own heartbeat. Alexander turned to me, and I already knew what he was thinking. Not because he said it. Because power always looks for the shortest road to survival. No, I said. His voice was low. I have not asked. You do not have to. I can see it. Claire. I did not bring my children here to become part of some arrangement. He stepped closer, stopping just far enough to prove he still understood distance. Neither did I. Then say it. Say you are not thinking that if they are yours, I become useful. His silence hurt more than any answer. I laughed once, small and empty. There he is. His jaw tightened. You walked into a burning room with our children, and you want me to pretend strategy does not exist. I want you to remember that we are people before we are problems." For the first time, he looked away. And in that small break, I saw it. Not guilt. Not yet. But recognition. Mrs. Hale appeared at the door before either of us spoke again, her face pale. "Sir," she said softly, "the little girl is asking for her mother." I moved immediately, but Alexander's voice stopped me at the threshold. "Claire." I looked back. He stood beneath the chandelier, the unsigned contract behind him, the storm pressing against the windows, and 5 years of lies standing between us. "Until I know who found you," he said, "no one leaves this house." I should have hated the words. Maybe I did. But down the hall, Lily called my name, and for the first time in years, I was not the only one hearing the fear in it. I found Lily in a room larger than our entire apartment, sitting on the edge of a bed she was too afraid to touch. The comforter was cream-colored, the lamps were soft gold, and someone had placed 2 folded sets of children's pajamas at the foot of the mattress like this house had been expecting them all along. Noah stood near the window with a mug of hot chocolate held in both hands, staring down at the driveway where men moved through the rain with quiet purpose. Lily ran to me the moment I stepped inside. I knelt and wrapped my arms around her, pressing my cheek to her damp hair. She smelled like rain, marshmallows, and the strawberry shampoo I had bought on sale 3 days ago, before our lives split open again. "Are we staying here?" she whispered. I looked over her shoulder at the hallway, where Alexander stood just beyond the door, not entering, not leaving, like even he understood the room belonged to the children first. "Just for tonight," I said. It was the kind of lie mothers tell when the truth is too heavy for small shoulders. Noah turned from the window. "The men outside have earpieces." "They are security," Alexander said from the doorway. Noah studied him with open curiosity. "Like the Secret Service?" Alexander paused. "Something like that. Are you famous?" "No," I almost laughed, but nothing in me felt light enough. Alexander Whitmore was not famous the way singers or athletes were famous. He was known in the spaces people lowered their voices to describe. Courtrooms. Boardrooms. Back rooms of restaurants where deals were made over untouched coffee. Noah took one step closer, then stopped when Lily grabbed my sleeve. Alexander saw it. His face remained still, but his hands eased at his sides, palms visible empty. A small thing. A careful thing. The kind of thing a frightened child might not notice, but I did. "No one in this house will come near you without your mother's permission," he said. Lily looked at him from behind my shoulder. "Even you?" The question struck the room with painful honesty. Alexander held her gaze. "Even me?" Something inside my chest tightened. Not forgiveness. Not trust. Just the terrible ache of seeing the man I once loved speak gently to the daughter he had never known existed. Mrs. Hale brought soup on a silver tray, but I made her set it on the dresser because the children were used to paper bowls and kitchen tables, not fine china and rooms that echoed. Noah ate first. Lily only started after I tasted hers and promised it was not too hot. Alexander watched from the doorway until I looked at him sharply. "They are not exhibits." His eyes moved to mine. "I know." "Then stop staring." He stepped back at once, and somehow that obedience unsettled me more than his control. An hour later, after the twins had changed into borrowed pajamas and fallen asleep side by side beneath a blanket that probably cost more than my monthly rent, I sat in the armchair between their bed and the door. I had no intention of sleeping. I had learned years ago that safety was not a place. It was a pattern. A lock checked twice. A window measured. A bag packed before sunrise. Alexander returned near midnight carrying a brown paper bag from my car. He did not enter until I nodded. "Your purse." "Their backpacks." The stuffed rabbit from the back seat. I took the bag from him, and my fingers brushed his for less than a second. It was nothing. Barely contact. But memory can live in the smallest places, and suddenly I was 23 again, standing in a flower shop while he held a bleeding rose stem and asked me why beautiful things always came with thorns. I pulled my hand back. "Thank you." "There are men at every entrance," he said. "The security system is active. No one gets through the gate without my approval." "You keep saying that like it should comfort me." "It should. Alexander, I spent 5 years making sure my children were never trapped behind someone else's walls. His gaze lowered to the twins. Noah had turned in his sleep, one arm thrown protectively over Lily's blanket. And I spent 5 years thinking you chose to disappear. My breath caught, but before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his expression hardened into something unreadable. What is it? I asked. He was silent for a moment too long. The man from the diner was seen outside St. Agnes twice this week. My stomach turned cold. Who is he? Alexander looked at the sleeping children, then back at me. Someone who should not know you exist. The words followed me into the quiet hallway after Alexander closed the bedroom door behind us. Someone who should not know you exist. I had lived with fear for so long that I thought I knew every shape it could take, but this was different. This was not a sound outside my apartment at midnight or a car slowing too long near the school. This was a name moving through Alexander's world, a shadow that made even him go still. Tell me who he is, I said. Alexander walked toward the study at the end of the hall, and I followed because leaving the question unanswered felt worse than walking deeper into his house. The study smelled like cedar, leather, and rain on wool. A fire burned low behind a black iron screen. On the desk, the unsigned marriage contract waited beneath a crystal paperweight, Madison's name printed beside his like a future already canceled. Alexander placed his phone on the desk and turned the screen toward me. The image was grainy, captured from across the street outside St. Agnes. The man in the gray coat stood beneath a green awning, looking toward the school entrance with his hands folded in front of him. Clean shoes. Calm face. Patient eyes. My stomach pulled tight. That is him. Alexander's jaw flexed once. His name is Henry Vale. Do you know him? I knew of him. That is not an answer. It is the safest answer I have until I know why he came back. Came back. The phrase slid under my skin. Back from where? Alexander looked at the photograph as if it had opened a door he wanted sealed. 6 years ago, the night you disappeared, Henry Vale was working for my mother. The room seemed to lose sound. Even the fire became distant. Your mother. Victoria trusted him with private matters. Things she did not want traced back to her. I gripped the edge of the chair beside me. The polished wood felt cold beneath my fingers. You told me she never knew about me. I thought she did not. He looked up then, and there was no performance in his face, no empire, no king, just the exhausted outline of a man discovering the past had been edited without his permission. I was wrong. My mouth went dry. Victoria Whitmore had always been more rumor than woman to me. A widow in pearls. A voice behind closed doors. The kind of mother who raised a son to stand straight even when the world tried to bend him. I had met her only once, and she had smiled at me like I was a stain she was too polite to mention. That was before I knew I was pregnant. Before 2 pink lines on a drugstore test turned my whole body into a secret. What does he want with my children? I asked. Alexander's eyes sharpened at the words my children, but he did not correct me. That is what I am going to find out. No, my voice came out stronger than I felt. You are not turning them into evidence. Claire. They are 5 years old. They like pancakes shaped like bears. Lily will only wear socks without seams. Noah thinks thunder is the sky-moving furniture. They are not bloodline proof. They are not council leverage. They are children. Something softened in his face, so quickly I almost missed it. I know. Do you? He crossed the room slowly, stopping far enough away to let me breathe. I know I missed 5 years of pancakes, socks, thunder, birthdays, fevers, first words, and every morning you had to carry alone. I know that because tonight, for the first time, I stood outside a bedroom door and was afraid to walk in. My chest hurt. I did not want his honesty. I did not know where to put it. Alexander, I whispered. He reached into the top drawer of his desk and removed a small sealed envelope. A doctor is coming at 7 in the morning. Not for them. For me. A simple sample. If you allow it, he can collect from the twins without distress. If you do not allow it, he leaves. I stared at the envelope like it was a cliff. You need a test? His eyes held mine. No. I need the world to stop being able to deny what I already know. I looked toward the hallway. toward the room where Noah and Lily slept under a roof built by the man whose eyes they carried. And when it proves they are yours? Alexander's voice dropped, quiet enough to feel like a vow. Then every lie that kept them from me starts answering to the truth. Morning came without mercy, gray and thin behind the curtains, turning the bedroom into a place that looked too beautiful for the kind of fear living inside it. I had not slept. I sat in the armchair until the sky changed color, listening to Noah breathe, listening to Lily murmur in dreams, listening for footsteps that never came too close. Alexander kept his word. No one entered without knocking. No one spoke above a whisper. At 7 exactly, Mrs. Hale brought breakfast on a wooden tray instead of silver, as if she had somehow understood that my children trusted pancakes more than porcelain. Noah woke first, blinking at the ceiling as if he expected it to vanish. "Are we still at the big house?" he asked. "Yes," I said, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Lily rolled toward me and tucked her stuffed rabbit beneath her chin. "Can we go home today?" Home. The word cut deeper than it should have. Our apartment with the uneven floorboards. The little kitchen table with crayon marks. The hallway light that flickered if someone slammed the downstairs door. I had spent years making that place safe with almost nothing, and one man in a gray coat had turned it into a memory overnight. "Not yet, sweetheart." She looked toward the door. Because of him? I knew she meant Alexander. Children always know which adult changes the weather in a room. Because I need to make sure nobody can scare us again. The doctor arrived after breakfast, a kind woman with warm eyes and a soft voice who introduced herself as Dr. Miles. Alexander stood in the hallway while I spoke with her, close enough to be present, far enough not to command the room. She explained everything to Noah and Lily like they were people, not problems. A simple cheek swab. No needles. No pain. Noah went first because he was trying to be brave. Lily only agreed after I did mine, even though no one needed it. When it was done, Dr. Miles sealed the samples in small envelopes, and I watched Alexander sign the paperwork with a hand that did not tremble. Mine would not stop. The waiting was worse than the test. Hours stretched through the house with unnatural quiet. Noah found a shelf of old wooden puzzles in the library. Lily sat beside Mrs. Hale in the kitchen and learned how to sprinkle cinnamon over apples. Alexander stayed near without hovering. He answered Noah's questions with surprising patience. How many rooms were in the house? Why the windows were so tall? Whether the black cars all belonged to him. When Noah asked if he had ever been afraid of thunderstorms, Alexander paused, then said, "When I was young, yes." Noah nodded solemnly, as if this confession had given him permission to like him a little. I hated how much that hurt. By late afternoon, the results came in through an encrypted message on Alexander's phone. We were in the study. The fire had burned low. Rain still traced the windows, softer now, like the storm had exhausted itself. Alexander opened the file, and I watched his face before I let myself look at the screen. There it was. Numbers. Percentages. Scientific language too clean for the damage it carried. 99.99% probability of paternity. Noah and Lily were his. The room did not explode. No one shouted. No chair scraped the floor. Alexander simply sat down as if his knees had forgotten they belonged to him. He stared at the screen for a long time, then covered his mouth with one hand and looked toward the ceiling. I saw him fight for control. I saw the empire return to his face piece by piece. But before it did, I saw the father. The man who had just learned that 2 children had taken their first steps, spoken their first words, and blown out 5 birthday candles without him because someone had rewritten all our lives. "I am sorry," I whispered, though I did not know which part of the tragedy I was apologizing for. His eyes lowered to mine, bright with something he refused to let fall. "Did you know when you left?" The question was quiet. That made it worse. I looked down at my hands. "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Claire, I was going to tell you that night." My voice broke, but I kept going because the truth had waited long enough. I had the test in my purse. I went to the flower shop early because I wanted to leave it with a note if I lost my courage. Your mother was waiting inside. Alexander went completely still. I tasted metal in my mouth, the old fear returning with its old hands. Victoria smiled at me like she already owned the ending. She said if I loved you, I would disappear before the child became a target. Then she placed an envelope on the counter with cash, a bus ticket, and a new name. His face went pale beneath the firelight. She knew. She knew everything, I whispered. Including that there were 2 heartbeats. Alexander did not speak after I said there had been 2 heartbeats. He stood in the middle of the study with the firelight cutting sharp lines across his face, and I watched something inside him break without making a sound. That was the thing about powerful men. People expected their pain to be loud. Alexander's was silent. It moved through his eyes first, then his hands, then the careful way he turned away from me as if he was afraid his grief might become something the room could not survive. I wanted to hate him in that moment. It would have been easier. Hate had kept me warm on cold nights when Noah had a fever and Lily cried because I could not afford the apartment with the bedroom window that closed all the way. Hate had given me a reason not to call him when I was alone in hospital rooms, filling out forms with a name that was not mine. But standing there, watching him realize his own mother had stolen 5 years from all of us, I could not make the hate stay clean. "Why did you believe her?" he asked, his voice rough. I looked at the rain sliding down the window. Because I was 23. Because I had $47 in my checking account. Because she knew the name of my doctor, the address of my apartment, and the exact bus station I passed every morning. Because she did not raise her voice. She just made survival sound like the only responsible choice. Alexander closed his eyes. "She told me you took money." The words landed softly, but they cut deep. I turned back to him. "I did." His eyes opened. "Claire." "I took it because I needed prenatal vitamins, a safe motel, and a ticket far enough away that no one would recognize me. I did not take it because I wanted to leave you." My voice trembled, but I refused to lower it. "Do you know what she said when I asked what would happen if I stayed?" He did not answer. He did not need to. The memory rose between us anyway. Victoria in my little flower shop, pearl earrings glowing beneath the fluorescent light, her gloves folded neatly on the counter beside the envelope. She had looked at the pregnancy test like it was a business problem, not a life. Not 2 lives. She said your world did not make room for weak women or unwanted children. She said if I stayed, your enemies would use us, your council would question you, and your family would choose your throne over our safety. I swallowed hard. Then she said love was only useful if it knew when to disappear. Alexander's hand tightened around the back of the chair. For 1 second, I thought he might overturn it, but he did not. He only stood there, mastering himself piece by piece, and somehow that restraint hurt worse than anger. "She made you afraid of me," he said. "No," I whispered. "She made me afraid for you." That was worse. Before he could answer, his phone rang on the desk. The sound was small, ordinary, almost rude inside so much pain. Alexander looked at the screen, and the room changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. The warmth vanished from his face. "What is it?" I asked. He answered without putting the call on speaker. "Yes." A pause. His eyes moved to the doorway. "When?" Another pause. "Lock down the grounds. No one leaves. No one enters." My blood went cold. "Alexander." He ended the call and picked up a tablet from the desk. Camera footage filled the screen, black and white, grainy from rain. The side gate. The service road. A familiar gray coat walking beneath the trees outside the property line. Henry Vale looked directly toward the camera as if he knew we were watching, then lifted one hand and showed something small between his fingers. A blue ribbon. Lily's blue ribbon. The one I had tied around her stuffed rabbit that morning. My knees nearly gave out. Alexander caught my elbow, gentle but immediate, and I hated that his hand was steady when my whole world was not. "Where is she?" I breathed. "In the kitchen," he said, already. Moving. But the hallway seemed longer than before, the house too quiet, every light too bright. I ran past portraits of dead Whitmores, past marble tables and closed doors, calling Lily's name until my throat hurt. Noah appeared from the library, confused, holding a wooden puzzle piece. "Mom?" I grabbed him with one arm and pulled him close. Where's your sister? His face changed. She went to show Mrs. Hale the rabbit. Alexander reached the kitchen first. Mrs. Hale stood beside the counter, pale and shaking, the stuffed rabbit in her hands. The blue ribbon was gone. Lily was not there. For 5 years, I had run from Alexander's world to keep my children safe. And now that world had reached for my daughter while I was standing under his roof. I did not scream when I saw the empty kitchen. Screaming belonged to people who still believed panic could bring a child back. I had learned a long time ago that fear needed hands, feet, breath, movement. I pressed Noah against Mrs. Hale, looked into his frightened gray eyes, and made my voice as steady as a floor I did not feel beneath me. Stay with her. Do not move unless I come for you. His lower lip trembled. Mom, where's Lily? I kissed his forehead because if I answered, I would break. I am going to get your sister. Alexander was already at the security panel, speaking in a voice so quiet that every guard in the house seemed to hear it at once. Doors locked. Gates sealed. Cameras shifted across screens. The estate changed around us, not like a home defending itself, but like a living thing waking up. Men moved through hallways with controlled urgency, never running, never shouting, and somehow that made it worse. She is not outside the property, one of them said from the doorway. Then she is inside, Alexander answered. His eyes found mine. Think, Claire. What would she follow? I closed my eyes. Lily hated strangers. Lily never wandered. Lily stayed where light touched the walls and where she could hear my voice. Unless something familiar pulled her away. My eyes snapped open. The rabbit. Mrs. Hale held it up, her hands shaking. The blue ribbon was gone, but around the rabbit's neck was a folded slip of paper I had not seen before. Alexander took it gently, opened it, and his face turned colder than winter glass. He handed it to me. 3 words were written in black ink. The conservatory remembers. I stopped breathing. What does that mean? Alexander asked. But I already knew. 6 years ago, before everything ended, Alexander had once brought me here in secret through the west entrance. Not to the mansion. To the old glass conservatory behind it, where his mother kept white roses that bloomed even in January. He had told me it was the only place in the estate that did not feel owned by his family. I had told him it felt like a beautiful cage. Victoria had heard me. She had remembered. I ran before Alexander could stop me. The hallway blurred. The house stretched endlessly, all marble, shadows, and portraits watching like witnesses too cowardly to speak. Behind me, Alexander called my name, but I did not slow down. I reached the west corridor and pushed through a set of glass doors into the damp evening air. The conservatory glowed ahead beneath the rain, its panes shining silver under the security lights. My shoes slipped on the stone path. My lungs burned. Then I saw her. Lily stood inside the glass house, small and pale among the white roses, clutching her rabbit with one hand and the missing blue ribbon with the other. Henry Vale stood several feet away from her, not touching her, not smiling, calm as a man who believed other people's fear was simply part of his work. I hit the door with both palms. Lily. Her face crumpled. Mom. Alexander reached me as Henry turned. For the first time since I had met him, the man in the gray coat looked uncertain. Not afraid of me. Not of the guards moving into the garden behind us. Afraid of Alexander, who stood perfectly still beside me with rain on his black suit and our daughter reflected in his eyes. Open the door, Alexander said. Henry lifted his hand slightly. I came to deliver a message. You used my child to do it. His voice did not rise. That was what made it terrible. Victoria wants the council vote to proceed. The Bennett woman leaves. The children remain protected under Whitmore authority. Madison becomes your bride. That is the arrangement. My whole body went cold. Not because the plan surprised me, but because it sounded exactly like Victoria. Clean. Practical. Cruel without ever needing to look cruel. Alexander looked at Lily, then at me, then back at Henry. There is no arrangement. Your mother believes otherwise. My mother has mistaken silence for permission. He stepped closer to the glass. Unlock the door, Henry. Henry hesitated. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down, and whatever he read drained the confidence from his face. Later, I learned Alexander had not needed threats. He had moved money, calls, signatures, loyalties, entire rooms of powerful men with a few quiet commands before we even reached the garden. Henry Vale's escape routes had disappeared one by one. His protection had vanished. The door clicked open. I rushed inside and dropped to my knees as Lily ran into my arms. She was shaking, but she was safe. Warm. Breathing. Mine. Alexander stopped in front of us, and Lily looked up at him through tears. "I wanted my ribbon back," she whispered. He lowered himself slowly, not too close, not too fast. "I know," he said. "I should have protected it better." Her small hand reached out before mine could stop it, and she touched his sleeve with 2 fingers. Something passed across his face then, something no council could command and no empire could buy. By midnight, the council gathered again in the grand hall, but everything had changed. Madison stood beside her father, pale with anger. Victoria Whitmore sat at the end of the table in pearls, beautiful and untouched, as if she had not just tried to rearrange our lives like furniture. Alexander walked in with Noah on one side, Lily holding my hand on the other. He did not ask the room for approval. He did not explain my worth in their language. He only looked at his mother and said, "You taught me that family is power. Claire taught me that family is responsibility." Then he turned to the council. "This is Claire Bennett, the woman I lost, the mother of my children, and the only woman this house will recognize beside me." The room went silent. I looked at him, waiting to feel trapped. Instead, for the first time in 5 years, I felt the walls around me become something else. Not a cage. A line no one would cross without going through both of us. Alexander had needed a bride to keep his empire, but when his children walked back into his life, he finally understood the truth his world had buried. A throne can make a man feared, but only love can teach him what is worth kneeling for.